Hello, sorry about that. I had a few problems before I got on stream. OBS decided to flip out on me, or I think my A10 Mini decided to flip out on me and stop the stream working. I lost all videos, so I had to reboot everything. So, good evening. Hello, it is Sunday again. I hope you guys are all safe and well. Just going to check this all looks as it should. Yes, that all looks fine. All working. Thank you. Good evening, Mark. Hope you're safe and well. Good evening, Robert. Craig, Floor Flyer, Steve, Geordie, RC Ritter. I'm waiting for Bruce. He'll be there in a minute. Duck me squeeze. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Catman FPV. Hello, hello, hello. Now, I hope you guys are all safe and well. What a week it's been. It's been a busy one. Anyone watched the Get Back trilogy yet? Who'd have thought Peter Jackson would have made another trilogy? Not everyone in here is going to be as old as me. However, if you are a Beatles fan, watch it. It'll blow your mind. It is absolutely fantastic. I haven't seen the race today, so I haven't seen the F1, so I can't comment on that. Tonight, as always, guys, it's another live stream. We're going to talk about some stuff. We're going to talk very quickly about the Mavic 3, because there is something I want to talk about on that, which is around this new bundle that DJI have announced that's annoyed people. Shock horror, DJI have done something again that's annoyed people. Everything they do annoys people right now, but we're just going to talk a little bit about that because it is relevant news. And then we'll get on and talk a bit about Orca, because there's a lot to talk about, and the digital FPV market isn't over yet. And whilst we don't know anything, whilst we don't know for sure, there are whispers and rumours of Orca might be entering the market, and that they could shake things up. And whilst it sort of feels like a two-horse race, and I'm not saying that HD0 isn't very good, because it is, the game might not be over yet, but we'll talk about that. We're going to talk then about FRSKY making an ExpressLRS module. And yes, before anyone says it, I saw a fantastic comment on Facebook, which was, they've always made ExpressLRS modules, they just bundled it with some bloatware. This is an official ExpressLRS module. Not that there is anything that is official, but it is labeled as an ExpressLRS module. So we've got that, and we're going to have to talk about a few other things as well. Now, just catching up with the chat. Good evening. I've just seen from, is it me or is the quality bad? It should be the same. There should be no difference on my side of things, but please do let me know. But there's certainly a lot of interesting stuff. I've just caught the comment on the F1 race. Oh, I might need to catch up on that one. I might need to catch up on. Maybe it's outgoing. Hopefully, it should be okay. There's no reason. Everything on my side looks correct. All of the settings are normal on my side. So I hope you guys are all safe and well. Now, before we get into the subjects, I'm just going to talk a little bit just about some other stuff that I've seen this week. And I'm not going to go into this too much. I have put a video out today, and for those who've watched it, I really appreciate all your feedback and comments. It's been amazing just to see how many comments and stuff people have put out. And what I've shared with you guys today is my thoughts right now on where things are at and where things potentially will go or need to go. And I'm just being honest, and that's what I'm trying to do. And try and make sure that you guys understand if the content changes a direction. You know, FPV is a massive part of this channel, always has been and will continue to be. I would like the ready to fly stuff to remain that way, but it is difficult. And I have been thinking this afternoon of, do I want to sell the Mavic 2 and stuff, which I am actually sitting here thinking about replacing the Inspire 2 and Mavic 2 with the Mavic 3. I'm not particularly concerned today, because right now it's not really ready anyway, but what I'm thinking about is in the future as well. But we'll talk about that too. What's the remote had a wheel to adjust? We'll talk about that as we go along. I think Mother Chubs are getting more subs through giveaway. Spoon FPV. Do we have snow in GB? Recently at 0.5 meter. There has been a little bit of snow, but nothing fantastic. Damn, I forgot to miss this again. Good evening, Bruce. the chat on screen should be identical to what I'm seeing. So, AutoGeek FPV, let me just find. You say you've had a... Is your chat selective? The last comment didn't show in your on-screen chat. Just curious. I'm not seeing another comment from you at all. If it's no selective on the on-screen at all, it should be exactly the same. AutoGeek FPV, post it again. I can't see it. I can't see your comment in my list at all as it is. Good evening, Bruce. How's the latency with Orca? We won't know. Look, there's a lot of whispers. Top chat or live chat. That's a point. That's what it'll be. There you go. I had it on the wrong setting. It should be top chat, but have I got it? It should be... Let me just copy that and make sure that it is correct before we get in. Let me just... There we go. I've changed it. It should be the same. I have just switched it to live chat, and that should now be replicated on the top. So, yes, just checking that down. So, there's a lot to talk about, as always. And as always, guys, if you have any questions, please do put them in the comment section. If you'd like to support the channel, there are links to our Patreon as well as Buy Me a Coffee. And I just want to thank everyone who has used our Patreon. We've had quite a few people come on board in the last week or two, especially again as well. So a massive, massive thank you to you guys, as well as the people who have today even gone on the Buy Me a Coffee too. Again, massively appreciate it. And after the video, it wasn't really designed to do that. But I do really appreciate it, and it all helps. And look, the video that I put out today was me just trying to almost share with you guys a little bit. And I'd actually recorded it twice, and there was the first video I recorded, I went on a bit more around some of the stuff you guys have mentioned in the comments around other channels being sort of not wanting to upset manufacturers, and I did have a bit of a rant about that, but I thought it's best it's not in there. It was me trying to be honest. So we're gonna have to see. Steve Man, how come Big Fish is named? I think some of this is a China thing. There are a number of products. No, Orca hasn't announced something, but there are whispers and rumors, and there has been for some time, and we're going to talk about that. Nothing has been announced. I will be clear on that, and I'm not aware of anything, but there is some stuff to talk about because there is noise that Orca are going to get into the digital FPV, and it could get very interesting, and it may not happen. It may not happen for 2 years. It may not happen for 3 years. But with this smoke, there's fire, and we're going to have to wait and see how things go on. And they really could mix things up. They really could. DJI spread a ton of money around lately. They are even sponsoring SUAS News. Say what you want to that. Or buying ads on SUAS News, I should add. I believe that went through. What do I think the odds are FRSKY to only connect with FRSKY manufactured? FRSKY being FRSKY, I think we'll save that for the FRSKY bit. Keep that question. Because I want that in the FRSKY bit. Okay, so yeah, lots of comment also have been teasing a bit. There's definitely something going on. It feels like something's going on. So, the first thing we're going to talk about, and let me get it up on the screen, and that is that DJI have announced in a rather sort of strange move that they're going to be announcing a Fly More combo, or releasing a Fly More combo with the RC Pro. Now, for those who didn't see or don't see this side of it, because I know my viewership is both, the original Mavic 3 came out as a standalone model with the cheap controller, as I've liked to call it, because it's recycled. It's come from 2 previous models, or they released it with the Fly More, still with the cheap controller but extra batteries. And then if you wanted the better controller, you either had to buy the Cine model, which was the very expensive one, or you had to buy the remote separately. Now, the problem with this was the remote's $1,000 plus, £900 in the UK. If we go to DJI.com and just look at the pricing, it is horrendous, from a price point of view. So you got the standard model, $1,879, the Fly More, $2,549, again with the cheap remote, and I'm going to call it that because I feel it is. That is my honest opinion. And then you get the smart remote in the Cine model, but you have to then buy the Cine model to have that smart remote. Whereas what DJI have actually done is announced that they're going to be making a Fly More with the Pro remote controller. So instead of having to buy the Cine model with the Pro, you're going to get a Fly More with the Pro. However, they haven't put a price on this yet, and it ain't going to be cheap. Let's just add that up. And this is a little interesting bit that I want to mention is we understand that some customers in some regions have purchased the DJI RC Pro separately before this new combo introduced. We will compensate those customers with DJI credit and coupons later. For more details on this program, wait for information from our official channels. Now, what they're saying is they're going to compensate people who bought either the standard Mavic 3 or the Mavic 3 Fly More and then went on to buy the RC Pro separately. So this has got a lot of people both annoyed and excited at the same time. Those who didn't buy it are quite excited because they want to buy that kit, and then those who did are sort of annoyed, but they're now looking at what they're going to get. Now, I'm going to just throw some caution. Don't expect a huge amount here. Unless they're taking that other remote back, they're going to be not giving you a lot. I'd be shocked if it's more than $50. They're simply going to throw you a bit of DJI credit that you have to spend on more accessories anyway. They're not going to let you keep that remote and give you $400 or $500 back. The retail price of that standard remote will be high, but the value they'll put on it as part of the kit will be very, very low. And I will be astonished if it's more than $50 or $60 or $70. It's just not going to be a lot. It really isn't. But it is interesting that they're doing it, and it's another change that's happened after the release. There are people who are very annoyed at this because they've bought the separate kits and they didn't know this was happening. And if they thought about this, they could have announced it at the launch and said, we're going to do a kit later. And there are people who are waiting to sort of see how it all pans out and what the actual value is. But it is interesting. We're going to have to wait and see. But for those who are going to buy, it's not going to be cheap. If you think the Fly More is $2,500 right now, I reckon they'll take $200 off the price of the RC Pro for the kit with the RC Pro. That remote will be $200. It will not be any more than $200. It won't be a lot. It won't be a lot. Don't expect it to be a great deal. So I reckon there'll be a Fly More kit around $3,200, something like that in the UK. Whatever it was in the US, I don't know. But I think it'll be about that pricing there. So that's gonna be that one on that. Just something else I wanted to quickly show you guys with regards to the Mavic 3 before I move on, because I'm not going to go too much on this. But I just done some checks, and it is interesting to see the analytics on this release. I'm just going to pop this up. So this is the Google YouTube search analytics for the last 90 days for search terms, and I've just been keeping an eye on it to see where things ended up. Now, it's always hard to search on these because you're searching for search terms. So I've searched for DJI Mavic 3, Mini 2. Now, the reason Mini 2 seems so high, because I've done Mini 2 and DJI 2, and the A2S seems to be the right search term for that model. Now, it is really interesting when you look at this, at the difference that happened at launch and then where the continued search analytics have landed. So if I just zoom in a bit more, just to show you guys this, we've then obviously got, so yellow is Mini 2, green is DJI Mini 2, so you can see them bumbling along. Mini 2 is coming across higher, so I'm not convinced that is a full DJI search analytic. However, the green one is DJI Mini 2. Now, this is YouTube only. Now, we can see along here, you can see a massive spike in both Mavic 3 and DJI Mavic 3. There's no question there was a big spike on them. So showing you that there, moving along. The blue is the DJI Mavic 3 and the red is the Mavic 3. So that search term spiked nicely and then it's panned off. But what's really interesting is look where it's panned off and look what has remained higher, the green. Okay, it's come up again here, but the DJI Mini 2 has remained one of the more popular search terms for DJI products on YouTube. So there was clearly a massive interest in the content for the Mavic 3, as you can see there by the red spike. However, the Mini 2 has actually remained the most popular searched, which I find very, very interesting, and that is worldwide. If we do it on web search, again, the results are very, very similar. Again, with the DJI Mini 2 remaining substantially above all of the other models. And what this does, and I started looking at this today after I did the video and sort of thinking on the Mavic 3, and what is clear, it is that the Mini 2 is their most popular drone by a long way. And whilst there's no question the search for the Mavic 3 has increased, it really has then fallen back down to the same level as everything else. And there's just nothing other than the Mini 2 jumping out. And it's very, very interesting. Very, very interesting indeed. So from a content making point of view, for instance, and if we go for Google Shopping, again, here's where it gets really interesting. We're going to have to ignore Mini 2. I think it's mixing other stuff in with that. If anyone has any ideas what else is named Mini 2, it'll be interesting. Let's go with the green one. I've left it there just to make sure you guys understand. But again, that Mini 2 is beating all of them consistently across the board. By far. And A2S is minimal. A2S is really minimal. Now, this really isn't concrete for anything. However, if you're looking like I've been at where the content is at, perhaps I should go and buy myself a Mini 2 and talk about some stuff on that and see how that goes. It is interesting. It's very, very interesting. Now, there was always going to be thoughts of the talk of the drone would do this and down, and it's done that. And at the end of the day, whilst it's easy for those of us who follow this stuff to get dragged into the hype, sometimes you do need to step back and look at what the public are doing and not what the industry is doing, because they can be two very, very different things. So I just thought I'd share that with you guys. It's quite interesting. A couple of last things I'll mention on the Mavic 3. We are starting to see some common issues come to light. None of them I don't feel can't be fixed in firmware. We have a clear issue with purple hazing appearing on some cameras. We have a strange gimbal behavior that people are seeing, where the gimbal is dropping in flight, dropping down a few millimeters. So the footage is fine, and then it's going dunk. And it's almost like either the gimbal mechanically moves or the mount moves or something. But I've seen a number of people post this, and it's quite weird indeed. And range issues, randomly, I'd love to understand them more, because because that's the OcuSync side of things. That's right up my street, and I'd like to see that. And I fundamentally think there is something wrong or something different in the flight characteristics on this drone. I'm wondering if they've moved to a new architecture for the flight controller, because DJI have never had a problem with their flight controller since the Phantom 4. They completely redesigned them in the Phantom 4, and everything from there has been absolutely solid. Compass issues are very small. IMU issues are very rare, and they've been solid. You always get problems with people flying from drain heads or cars, but the normal stuff is mostly fine. However, I am seeing more and more reports of people getting TBE style behavior. So if you don't know what that is, it floats, it drifts, the horizon goes off. I'm not talking about normal horizon issues like Ken's got. I'll talk about that in a second. But it just goes out of control. But there's something going on, and I've seen a number of reports of it. It is always hard to mix out the issues among people's mistakes, but there are key things. And gimbal horizon issues. A number of people are posting issues with the gimbal horizon in normal use. Again, it's a trait of most drones, if I'm honest. DJI is... Actually, I'll say this. It's really hard to do a gimbal well. And I think we forget how hard it is. But people are having it. So there are some issues, not that it's missing half the features I expected it to have. Actual proper issues have come to light. None of them, I don't feel, are anything that you can't fix in firmware. Hopefully we'll see some firmware. I am really looking forward to the first proper teardown. I want to see the flight controller on this because I think something has changed. I'm intrigued if something has changed on this. Also, no talk about multiple sensor redundancy. Isn't it interesting that DJI made a lot of fuss in their drones for a period of time where they had multiple IMUs, multiple compasses? All of that seems to have gone out the window. All of that seems to have gone out the window. Ian in London speaks of it too twitchy. Yeah, the flight characteristics seem off as well. A number of things seem off on the flight controller side of it. It's going to be interesting to see. Duck my squeeze. The gimbal donk is normal behavior if flying forward at speed with the camera level horizon gusts. Big gust lead to the craft angle exceeding maximum. It's weird, but it drops down. This one didn't seem to be high speed. The video I've seen is fairly straightforward, but again, you can't fully appreciate the speed someone's going. I just wonder if they've moved away from ARM. DJI have used ARM in their SoCs for the F4s for a long, long time, for the most part. And I'm just wondering if they've moved to something like FRSKY or something like that, because ARM is difficult to get hold of right now. So you never know. They may have completely rewritten the flight control algorithm. Interesting times. I want a full teardown. Yeah, I've seen that on the smaller cameras where they do that, but interesting. You know, it's interesting stuff. In some ways, it's frustrating because there's stuff I'd love to be testing on this around the range issues and stuff people are having, because that's the start of stuff I've always made content on. I could buy one tomorrow. It's just it leaves me in a very difficult position, and that's the problem I was talking to you guys about earlier, and that's why I was saying in that video, it's not as simple as just going out and it getting paid for by the channel. It's about how do I make this work moving forward. And I think this drone will be around a few years. So I do think there is value in it moving forward. I just have to evaluate how I move forward with the ready to fly stuff as well. So that gets that out of the way. So that's the Mini 3. That is the Mavic 3 out of the way. Having a sip of tea. Now, if you've got any questions on that, guys, I'm just going to catch up on the chat before we move on to the next subject. Are YouTube numbers up this year? It's hard to say. It is interesting, actually, on the YouTube numbers. I've seen some interesting videos by a number of the computer game creators and stuff like that. If anyone follows Jay's 2 cents and them, and Jay's put a video up the other day talking about where he's asking what people want to see. And I feel for those channels because the gaming channels and the channels that talk about computer tech have had a really tough year because, yes, they're getting seeded products to talk about, but every time they're getting them, their community and their viewers kick off because they can't buy the product. So a new graphics card is released that no one can buy, and he does a review of it, and they're getting loads of crap for that. And I really do feel for them because, you know, their channels are built on making content for you to understand how the hardware is. They're still being seeded product by manufacturers, but every time they talk about it, they're getting crap and they're getting hate and they're getting people abuse them. And it's a real interesting time. And it's different to the drone industry because the bubble is bursting. And don't get me wrong, FPV is as vibrant as ever, but the ready to fly drone industry is collapsing a little bit, I think. We've seen that. You're seeing a lot of the same content being posted. I think Philip Bloom's second part of his Mavic 3 videos coming this week, and his was outstanding. If you haven't seen it, it was absolutely amazing. If you haven't seen Philip Bloom's, I suggest you watch it. He shows what it's all about. And it's hard to navigate where we go. And my point earlier in my video wasn't about do I want someone else to pay for the aircraft. It's not as simple as that. What I'm talking about is the ready-to-fly drone business has become an expensive hobby for everyone involved. And it's going to be very hard to continue to make content. And I know someone mentioned Ian in London earlier, and Ian's really good at eking it out. And I'll be intrigued to know, has he been able to make something as expensive as the Mavic 3 pay? That's a real tough one, especially if the numbers are low. If it's not gathering the interest. I have noticed a few channels start talking negatively about it on purpose as well. I just clicked on it and I was watching it and I was like, okay, I can see what they're doing. They're looking for the negative video rather than the positive. It's easy for it. Look, I'm giving an opinion because I don't have it in hand. I'm not reviewing. Nothing I've ever said is a review. I've never reviewed the product because I don't have it. I'm talking about what I'm seeing, but it's not a review. And that's the thing. But yeah, Ian in London does a great channel as well, and it's going to be interesting. You know, I'd love to evaluate it from a camera drone point of view properly. I'm not in any rush. At the end of the day, until the firmware update comes, which we all think is going to be in January, and I am hoping that does come as everyone's expecting. I have a feeling they're going to have a lot to do. So there could be a lot. I don't know. I would tame expectations based on DJI's history. You know, for all of this to come at once, what people are seeing, I think, is a big ask. That's all I'm going to say on that as well. Yeah, I did see. I know Ken's had Horizon issues, Rob. I did see that. A2S's Mini 2 image quality. It is very good on the Mini 2. You can't go far wrong with that. You really can't. Okay, I'm gonna have a sip of my tea before we move on to the next subject. And get myself prepared. Now, I'm doing these a bit separately these days because I do strip them out for the live stream. Mavic 2 firmware took me a year to be what we call feature complete. Didn't expect. No, I agree with you, Dr. My Squeeze. I think a lot of people are betting a lot on January, and I just wouldn't be expecting everything. Okay, so the next subject we're going to talk about. Actually, I'm going to go onto the full screen. I'm going to start that again because I want to cut it for the live stream bit. Sorry, guys. Anyway, so the next topic we're going to talk about is FRSKY. Now, FRSKY have become the baddie of the FPV industry. Whilst most of us, if not almost everyone who's flown for a period of time, has probably had a radio of theirs, and we've all been in the ecosystem for the most part, over the last few years, they have been the bad boy of the FPV industry and aircraft and drone, simply because of their behavior towards users, the ecosystem, and simply the madness that they've created. And it's got so mad that one of their own support companies who works with them have had to release a multi-use firmware that gets around the problems for users. And all of the FRSKY issues have been firmware. Their continued behavior around forcing you into corners around the firmware. Don't get me wrong, there are some things that they had to do, which is LBT, for instance. That was a legislation requirement. At the end of the day, I understand that. So you had EU firmware and the rest of the word firmware. But all of this behavior to block out the multi-protocol modules, access, and everything they did has made them really not particularly well liked. It's allowed companies like Jumper and others to step up, and Radio Master, Jumper, Beta FPV even, and they really have fallen out of favor. And whilst their systems are still used well, there is no question from an FPV community point of view, other than the radio, people are just not wanting to know. And I remember when FRSKY was at its peak, they were making some of the smallest receivers on the market. The XSs, they were fantastic pieces of kit, yet they took it all and threw it away. Now, we've had a bit of a strange, not announcement, but release this week, and that is a new module from Horus that supports ExpressLRS. Now, before you say this, we know that FRSKY have been making hardware for ExpressLRS. It just came with the different firmware on. But this is official. So what we've got is a new module which is labeled. What is it labeled? It is labeled the Vantac 2.4 gigs ExpressLRS TX module. Now, this is actually listed on the HorusRC.com website, and it is a 2.4 gig ExpressLRS module for the slim radios. There is literally very little information on here. Vantac, it just literally, it says Vantac 2.4 gigs ExpressLRS module. But what is really interesting about this more than anything is that it is identical to an existing radio from FRSKY, which is the FRSKY XJT Light External Transmitter Module for Light SS Pro, etc., which is their Access D16 module. And when you look at it closer, if we look at it closer here, if you look at the casing, it is basically identical, right? There is literally, let's just put it up. If you look around, you've got the molding marks, the LED, the molding marks, the little symbol receiver. And there are some little changes to the molding by here, but everything else is the same. It basically is the same module. So this really does put things in an interesting position, because we've now got Horus pushing out a module designed for ExpressLRS officially. It's a light transmitter, but they are doing it. They also have an ExpressLRS receiver as well. So if we search, they have done a transmitter and receiver module, which is very, very interesting. Oh God, it's not coming up when I do it that way. Radio spare parts. Let me just find it. Receivers, ExpressLRS 2.4. The website is shockingly slow. Shockingly slow. There we go. And they've got a small ExpressLRS receiver as well for $12.99. Now, this could be the start of FRSKY taking ExpressLRS seriously. It is an interesting proposition to think of FRSKY entering ExpressLRS officially. There's no official way to do it other than make the hardware, but the official part of it is that they will be selling it as officially supported for ExpressLRS. And it does raise some interesting questions, because FRSKY don't exactly have a great history of good behavior towards open source systems. Just take OpenTX. And it will be very interesting to see what their behavior is towards it. Now, someone posted a question earlier, is should we be worried if they take it on like they did with the Access and all of them, and making their hardware incompatible with others? And frankly, yes. That is a very simple reality. However, I think it would be very hard for them to do it in the current ExpressLRS world. The difference was with OpenTX was that they had the devs on board. There was money changing hands, there was paid support and things like that. That isn't going to happen in ExpressLRS. So their previous model of walking in and sort of going, hey, we'll help fund this, isn't going to work with ExpressLRS, because everyone has seen that before. So it is interesting, but it is potentially that they've decided that if you can't beat them, join them. It has to be hurting them. ExpressLRS has to be absolutely annihilating them. I firmly think that TBS don't have a huge amount to worry about with regards to ExpressLRS. Trappy has built a good business, he's got a good reputation overall, and they do good things. I don't see Crossfire. Tracer is... I wouldn't like to see where the future is for Tracer, but Crossfire is probably going to be okay. I actually see Tracer and Crossfire merging in some ways, like ExpressLRS, and you will then have a new name for the system, which will be capable of both frequencies, and it will become one. Rather than this mess of Tracer and Crossfire, I can see there just being, they should have just called it Crossfire 2.4, if I'm honest. They should have just called Tracer that. There was no need to create a different name for it. I do think it's complicated things, but I do think Trappy may end up having to do it just to make life. You wouldn't want... The big push right now is making 2.4 as good as 900. And for the most part, in ExpressLRS, it is. So there is a good argument to be had of why do you even need 2.4? I've seen some questions on ExpressLRS and people saying, what about 433 and lower frequencies again? And the argument back is always, we haven't reached the range limit of what ExpressLRS can do today. And that's a fair point. And whether it will need to go down or not, I don't know. But I do think TBS will be okay. But others have to be concerned. Immersion RC with Ghost and those others, when you do the search analytics on these other radio systems, it ain't good. It really is not good. And that tells you a lot. Have I closed that window? I haven't. I'll put it up. And when you do look at these, it's quite stark. It really is quite stark. LRS. We'll change this one to Crossfire. D Crossfire, not D Crossfire. Crossfire. There we go. And if we search for FRSKY, and don't get me wrong, FRSKY should be higher because it's a brand at the end of the day. And if we add RC Ghost, and then we'll get rid of that last one. Remove. Let's just zoom out so I can show you guys this and put the desktop up. So what we got here? Past, what are we going to say? 12 months. Not on shopping. We're going to go on web search. And look, FRSKY is higher. That's to be expected because it's a brand, not a system. However, you then got Crossfire and ExpressLRS below. But just look how ExpressLRS is coming up. It's getting higher all of the time. And if we add in Tracer, TBS Tracer is well down the bottom. Tracer's just not there. Whereas ExpressLRS is really coming up. And again, it's hard with FRSKY because it is a brand as well. If we were to look at YouTube, that might give us a slightly different result. But again, FRSKY is widely used. But there's no question ExpressLRS is up, whereas Crossfire is still good. So it's going to be interesting to see where this ends up. It really is. It really does look interesting. And there is, I saw a comment earlier, it isn't LoRa Tracer, but they have said it's coming in the next version. And it's going to be very interesting to see where this all ends up. Perhaps it's a game of them saying, if you can't beat them, join them. And it's as simple as that. Just going to catch up on the chat. Problem is they make solid hardware. They do. ExpressLRS access gives you extra robustness and performance of access with a long range in ExpressLRS. Not to my like. But Tracer isn't LoRa. Saturate range for low latency. It's only good because it has a higher output power. Sounds good. Those sim version modules are usually lower power, but the full size versions they are. LoRa is coming for Tracer. He has confirmed it. When you do look at, people aren't hitting the limit of 2.4 in ExpressLRS, let alone 900. I do think I can see the TBS systems becoming into one. They all look like in a decline to me. It's moving around. It always moves around. It's available SPI and UART packages, license free, and it does duck my screws. Granny tweaking. It is interesting. So it is. It hell has froze over. You know, let's be realistic. Look, I'm not going to recommend buying one of these. It's not available yet. If it was available, I'd order one in just to see what it's like. It's pre-order. They're obviously testing the waters. It'd be interesting to see if it's exactly the same module or not as the X-Lite. It will be very interesting to see if it is. But there are much better options out there right now. Access have their new ExpressLRS module coming. I'm probably going to order that one in. I have reached out to them and they just haven't replied, which is frankly rude. However, it is what it is. If I go to YouTube, if I go to Facebook and find it, which is pretty adequate for multiple kilometers, it's hard to judge replacing gear for the sake of it when you have working reliable setups. Yeah, I think it comes up when it comes to radio changing. That tends to be when these things come up, isn't it? And when people swap radios, that tends to be the point of these things. So Axis have their new ExpressLRS module coming, which I'll put up now as well to show you guys. This is the new Axis ExpressLRS module. This is quite a large piece of kit, if I'm honest. It goes on the back of the radio, but they're showing you it here and they're walking through all the settings. Again, what this means is it looks like it's got their own firmware on board. What I don't know is this their own version of the full ExpressLRS build, or is there a separate like companion firmware for controlling it? We're not 100% sure yet, and we're going to have to wait and see on where that ends up. And they've got it listed on their website. It is quite a large module, and there are some things to really not like about this. For instance, there's a wire coming out of the bottom that has to go into the radio, which isn't great at all. It is RF output. It's up to 1 watt, 1,000 milliwatts. 5-pin. They're saying it's got a 5-pin lock-in plug. Let me just see if I can open that bigger for you guys. There you go, so you can see it. So what they're showing you here is RF power is 10 watts, 100, 10, 25, 100, 250, 500, 1 watt. 5-pin lock-in plug, USB-C connection, as well as XT30 power port. You've then got the Thor Pro, display seat mode, automatic display wig via motion detector, auto idle off, backpack function, and built-in Wi-Fi update, which all sounds fine. It's that big. It's got a unique storage box on board. Okay, I didn't wonder. Didn't wonder what that was for. And then it's got this compatible with Futaba radios without JR bays. I personally think they should have made a JR bay one. I think it's a bit silly, this. And it's got passive cooling on the front and automatic cooling on the back, and it's got an automatic fan mode as well. And they're saying it's user-friendly with 5-way tactile switch. What could possibly go wrong with a 5-way tactile switch on an ExpressLRS module? You tell me that. So it is interesting that Access do have this. I may order one to tear it apart and have a look at how it looks. It does have a storage box. Yes, you heard me right. They're saying, if we just go to the cost, Express module only $127. So this is going to be one of the most expensive ExpressLRS modules on the market as well. Frankly, I don't really know what to say other than I'll have some of what they're on, please. Because bearing in mind the Beta FPV module is half that cost, and it's not a bad module. It's not 1 watt, but it's not a bad module. If we go to Happy Model, they have their Pro module. And if we go to Happy Model, which is the ES24TX Pro, which is their 1 watt 2.4 gig module, which is available. And that costs, let's just have a look what that costs. Is that the Pro model on Banggood? No, that's not the Pro. I'm just looking. Is it actually out yet? I don't know if the Pro one has actually started to be sold yet. It ain't going to be that expensive. It is not. Ah, here you go. Banggood. It's on Banggood. That's the TX Pro. £38. What's that? 56. Oh, let's change it. Come on then. Let's change the currency to US. You fantastic people. United States. English United States. Oh. Why is it changing? USA. Oh, I gotta search for it again. That's frustrating. There we go. $49. $49 compared to $130 for the Axis. 127. So I think, yeah, I'm gonna be nice, but I'll have whatever you're on, please. Oh yeah, next to the Banggood, is it? You can change the currency. Ah, yeah, sorry, I missed that. Yeah. So, yeah, Access have this new module, $127, or with the receiver, $139. So with the receiver, it isn't bad, but the cost of this module with the module only is $127, and the module with one receiver is $139. It is very, very expensive. And in fact, I'm not even sure I can justify getting that in to talk about. The built-in draw is not in the main module itself. It's in the JR Bay section of the modules. So if we look, what we've got is the module itself. And again, this all feels very sloppy with the wiring coming out the bottom. You've then got the module with the color screen. Wait, we got a color screen. Okay. 5-way button. Built-in drawer at the back. I did send them a message, failsafe, but they didn't respond. They're probably not going to after this, are they? I think it's very expensive, but I would love to see it. I would like to see if there is a reason to spend $130 on an ExpressLRS module. That I would like to do. I'd like to see if there is a reason for it. Perhaps there is. We don't know. Remember, good hardware costs money. Maybe not that bad. Much money, though. So we're going to have to wait and see. We're going to have to wait and see on that. But yeah, it is interesting. It's a lot of money, though. A lot of money. With 1 watt, you can even afford a color screen on the back. Gold plated, yes. It's a lot of coin. The Mimno 2.4 feels like a parrot. The Mimno is the module I want to get in next. I'm finishing up. Good evening, Mike. How are you? I'm finishing up the reviews on the other receivers. I've done it all. I just need to put them together. I've got a bunch of content I'm trying to get ready for over the Christmas period. So I've started, just to share with you guys, I've started a series of videos on HD0. We're going to talk about that at the very end, which is going to be how to update the firmware, how to recover in a firmware failure, basic setup and config, HD0 versus DJI on a Spectrum and the Spectrum Analyzer, and just talking about the differences the systems have when flying around other people, because they are both very similar on the Spectrum, but it's the differences that make the DJI versus HD0 and how that affects people when flying in close quarters. And it's stuff I've already discussed in multiple other videos. I've already discussed this multiple times, especially in the DJI ones. But I'm going to sort of do why HD0 plays better with other systems is the best thing. And then I want to do a video just on the power outputs of the modules with the 1 watt VTX when that comes out as well. But I've started editing the first HD0 video today. It's basically finished. I've got to edit the second one. I've then got to re-record the setup video because the flight controller I'm testing it on doesn't work properly and I can't get the OSD working. I don't think it's my board. I think it's my flight controller. Believe it or not, I've ran out of bench test flight controllers. So I'm waiting on one to come in that I already know is being sent to me. So I'm going to end up using that. So that should be here in the near future. And we're going to have that on the HD0 side. And then I've also got the ExpressLRS receiver videos, which is the Namimno, the other Happy Model video, because I've now got 4 Happy Model receivers, and I will be straight with you guys up front. My hit rate on them isn't great, I'll be honest. And then what's the other one? The Namimno, the Happy Model. Let me just have a look on my list of videos that I got to make. There's the Namimno, the Happy Model. Oh, and the Beta FPV receiver. Sorry, I've got the Beta FPV receiver as well. So I've got those three. Those 3 are separate videos. Again, they're simple, basic reviews, showing you what they're like, what they're built like. FPV Steve, is ExpressLRS legal in the UK? Complicated question. Technically, yes. Technically, no. Depends on what power you fire it at. It is a complicated question. Technically, yes. Technically, no. Do I think DJI will come out with an OcuSync 3 version for the next FPV VTX now that they saw? Well, technically, the FPV system is OcuSync 3. Technically, it is already. It's not OcuSync 2. And it's not OcuSync 3. It sits probably, if you wanted to call it something, it's OcuSync 2.5. But it's complicated. Do I think DJI will make another FPV system? Who knows? If I'm a betting man, if it existed, it would basically be 1080p. It would basically, they'd push it to 1080p. Latency would remain about the same. Dual band. That's probably what it would be. I'm not confirmed, though. I'm not convinced it will happen. What is clear, if you watch my OcuSync video, is that the FPV system was a test bed for everything they did moving forward. And that's the real interesting bit. And they've done this time and time again. This test bed. They use a product as a test bed. It's very DJI. Shove it into a market where it's out the way and sort of test it and get it moving and go from there. We don't know. No one knows what they're going to do. They could do it tomorrow. You know, something I'll add from my video, if you've watched the OcuSync video, is there's 1 or 2 people who clicked on something I didn't say, but I was alluding to, and that is there is no reason the FPV goggles version 2 won't work with all of the OcuSync 3 drones. So we're talking about the A2, the A2S, and the Mavic 3. There's no reason they won't. The FPV goggles version 2 actually have a hidden mode in the firmware for the A2S. Just no one can access it. That has been found. It's there. If you remember how they work, and I've said this before, the version 2 goggles have a dual boot firmware. Well, it's not actually dual, it's triple. But we can't access that other one. There's no way to gain access to it. We don't know how well it works. We don't know how to access it. People have found it. It's not as simple as hacking it because it's not a hack. The very basics of it are not there to access it. DJI may have put a secret combination in, we don't know. But at the moment, the guys haven't been able to find it. And this is information other people have given me. We don't know how well it works. It might not work properly at all. It might not be possible. But there is support in the device list for the A2S. It just won't bind and it doesn't work at this time. Does that suggest it's coming? I think if it was going to, it would have. The A2S is an old product. Now, I think if it was going to, it would have. I think it's there. Imagine DJI motion controller. Yeah, there's no reason that couldn't work as well. There really is no reason that couldn't work. At all. There are zero technical reasons that motion controller could not be made to work. It uses the same chipset and everything as it uses the same chipset and everything as the normal remote. 2 seconds. There's just technically no reason. You know, when we go on the consumer models, an FPV, go to the store. There it is. You know, it uses the same chipset. There's no reason. As for why, only DJI can answer that. Politics doesn't meet the standards they expect, doesn't work as they would expect, don't want to put the firmware in place, other compromises. It's very complicated. Over the years, DJI have done a lot of things that are weird that you can't always explain. You know, the model is in the model list, but they've simply not added support for it. Hard to explain, but I prefer having control over my gear. Yeah, look, the DJI FPV system is very, very good. HD0, though, is up there now on image quality. Just wait till this 1 watt VTX comes. Just wait until the 1 watt VTX comes. It won't be about image quality anymore. It will be about different behaviors from the system. You will be choosing a system based on what behavior you want, not as such out and out range. It will be down to what do you prefer. Do you prefer the breakup of one system versus the other? DJI will still be better in certain applications, because of the way DJI is able to hold the frame and deliver that frame a little bit later. In some situations that helps, not in bando flying and stuff like that, but it does sort of have its benefits. But with the 1 watt system, all of the noise I'm hearing, and hopefully we may have some content to share with you on that, we'll talk about that at the end, not today but in the future, it's going to be a lot more compelling. And I know some very, very good people are looking at it. Some guys who do a lot of long-range testing as part of the ExpressLRS system, Wes. And I think Wes is having a play with the 1 watt as well. So let's see what Wes comes up with. 720p 60, yes. But the thing to understand, failsafe, with HD0 is whilst this 720p 60 is delivering it line by line, whereas the DJI system delivers it in 2 half frames. So when DJI delivers 120 frames a second, it's doing it in 2 separate halves. Do you want it to go potato when it breaks up, or do you want it to go sparkles? Choose between potato or sparkles. Duck my squeeze. That will be your choice. Would you like potato or sparkles with your FPV? I like video out goggles. USB-C to phone wasn't possible according to DJI. Like, yes, there are many things that DJI do that That was questions. Okay, I sidetracked the stream. Ban on DJ mentioning from now on. Yeah, we're jumping between. But it leads us on nicely, this, before I make up a tea. I like analog. It's clear as mud right from the start. Yes. Okay, let me get myself lined up. So, the next thing I want to talk about is Orca. Now, Orca is a company that is well known in the FPV industry, but they're not a brand that instantly jumps off the page like Fat Shark, Animation RCs, and others. But they have built up an absolutely solid and good reputation on their FPV goggles, which are no longer available. And there's been whispers for quite some time that Orca were going to deliver a digital FPV system. Now, I'm going to be clear, there's no news at this point in time. We know nothing more, but there are whispers roaming around the FPV corridors and talk that Orca may be working on something. This may never happen. It may never come. None of us know at this point in time. But the reality is, Orca haven't vanished, and whilst at this moment in time the only product they seem to be selling is their remote controller, I think it's pretty certain there'll be another set of FPV goggles in the future, simply because that's what they made. And then maybe around that, something else around digital FPV. And the reason there's a lot of hints on this is if we jump over to the desktop, and I'm on Orca's website, Ivan has been putting sort of some posts on Facebook, and 6 days ago he talked about earlier this year we at Orca co-founded a company in Estonia together with the defense, security and robotics industry veterans to combine our low latency headset technology blocks into a system for the advanced operation of armored fighting vehicles. So this is very much military based applications, and they go on to talk about it, and he says this: by the end of the year we will share some exciting news and partnerships we have done so far. If we succeed in our mission, it'll become the name of the company will become one of the most advanced defense and dual-use products ever designed. Now, this is clearly talking about their defense work. However, there is a lot of talk around something coming from Orca, because right now, the only thing they're really selling is this remote controller. You know, the goggles, the headset isn't actually available anywhere right now. You can't actually get it. So it's going to be really interesting to see. Now, we know Orca have quite a close relationship with Immersion RC because their remote controller is based off Ghost. They have that system built in already, and it uses the Ghost system built in with that 2.4 gigs, 500 hertz, ultra low latency system. So there's definitely a path here for Orca to be talking about bringing a digital FPV system and doing it with maybe someone like Immersion RC. But at this moment in time, all we actually have is this remote, and the FPV-1 is pretty much out of stock everywhere. You simply cannot get these goggles anywhere right now. You really can't. Even the video is down showing the OLED screen. And it is interesting. It is interesting. And we're going to have to wait and see what comes. We don't know. I think it would be insanity to think there won't be a new headset, or perhaps this will come back. There's got to be something. They're a company that sells a headset. We're going to have to wait and see. But there's got to be something coming on this. Now, for me, the question is, everything up until now has very much been about DJI and HD0. And I'm not saying that's bad, but all I'm going to say is don't forget about Orca, because they have the potential to really disrupt where things are at right now, especially if they were to come out with what was said to be an open source HD system. I've said this to Bruce a few times and others and I've said this several times on this channel. There are new chipsets around the corner that will be almost good enough, if not good, off the shelf, to do this without a custom ASIC. due to the 5G stuff, due to the pushing forward of technology. Right now, HD FPV is having to rely on custom chipsets. So HD0 is using their chipset. And if we actually look at that, if I go to the overhead, we've got a VTX here. We've got the HD0 chipsets in this VTX. We'll actually stick them under the microscope in a minute, but the DiviMath chipsets, so they're having to do it. For those who saw my video on OcuSync, you'd have seen me talking about the DJI P1 and the S1 chipset, which again appear to be custom ASICs. We don't know for sure. There is some other talk in the industry out there as well. However, at the moment, off-the-shelf hardware just hasn't been good enough. The real interesting thing is DJI tried using off-the-shelf hardware in their earlier OcuSync systems, as I said, which was the lead core chipsets, and that wasn't getting them the performance they wanted, so they ended up going to this custom ASIC. But there is a point when the hardware will catch up as a result of the new 5G networks and as a result of all of the new handsets and everything coming forward. And it's at that point things are going to get very interesting. Now, OpenHD is trying to do this now, but they're trying to do it with the basic cheap hardware we've got today. What will be very interesting is when this comes with a off-the-shelf chipset that doesn't require a Raspberry Pi, and then they can integrate that chipset into a system. And I don't think that is very far away. I'm not talking months. I'm talking in the next 1 to 2 years. I don't think that is very far away at all. And we're going to have to see what happens. And I think it could get very, very interesting. And Orca could really disrupt where we're at today. And then that custom ASIC becomes a problem for manufacturers because it becomes their limiting factor. Because once there's off-the-shelf hardware, that expands things dramatically. And then you could even have the likes of TBS and others get involved. Do we think TBS are going to stay out of digital FPV forever? I don't think they are. I think at some point they're going to have to peg their nail into the wall and put a flag on it. And it might not be HD0. And look, I think Carl with this is doing fantastic work. I really do. I think the system has come on tremendously in the last 12 months. And I've got a lot of good to say about this, and I will be talking about it in the future. But the fact remains, it has limitations. I'm not going to hide from that. We don't hide from the product's issues. DJI's is out and out range, and the fact that latency suffers for that range and the packet retries. HD0, the way it breaks up and the way it doesn't have packet retries, which limits its overall performance with regards to penetration and at times out and out range, but that may be resolved with power as we get to the 1 watt. However, there is a possibility that something could come from someone else that really disrupts what we've got today, and if it's using off-the-shelf silicon, that is really going to make things very, very interesting because it opens the doors for any number of people to get involved and not just even Orca and others like that. So there's no info on this today. There's nothing confirmed. But all I would say with Orca is watch this space. This company, I have a feeling, are going to be a lot noisier in the next year or more. Hopefully there'll be headsets available soon, because we want more than a remote from them. Has anyone tried the remote? I'll be interested to know. Has anyone used it? I will be interested if anyone has used it. But I think we're going to see a new headset from them at some point, and I would like to think it wouldn't be in the too distant future. And then we're going to have to see where things end up. Now, jumping over to the chat. Sorry, guys, I got a bit of a cold as well, I have. I missed the DJI Clarity. DJI is very good, especially the DJI FPV drone. The DJI FPV drone is unbelievable. XJet was on a list years ago when he proposed an RC cruise missile, lol. Excellent. I want a military grade drone. Hi. I want my armored drone. Congratulations. You're on a list. Oh, right. Okay. Cheers, Steve. Good list or bad list? I've got hopes for Orca. Fail safe. Mad, have I seen mouse the price of the AD user AC0 system? No, I haven't, Bruce. What's it at now? We'll get the scope out in a minute. Equal parts Chinese. It's gonna be in. I looked at using SDL on my own drive, but figured it was way too dear. Yeah. HD0 is an interesting one, is how it's funded. We don't know. You know, I don't know Carl particularly well at all. I don't know what their funding model is. They've obviously got their own ASIC. You know, you're not making it, let's be realistic. By the time you take retailer margin out of something, you're not making a lot of money at £40, £50 a board. You're not. Do you know what I mean? DJI has adaptive latency already. Imagine a HD FPV system with dynamically switches between low latency, and then when the image goes bad, gets over sort of tech DJI uses. Yeah, you know, you could. There is an option to have this where you sort of have a mix of system. That would be very cool. Trappy will eventually yield to the demand. I think it'll happen. It's just, where's he going to peg his mast? You know, where's he going to put the flag? That's the question. Do GGI. Hello, Ram, Donko. How are you? Hope you're safe and well, my friend. I'm gonna go with the EDF quad line of sight before the sunset. I'm gonna go fly. Oh, okay, mate. You stay safe. Embedded fabrication. Trappy never yields. Drop the pressure and he will join the HD train, saying he did it when he wanted in 2 weeks or so. Zen flight. The smallest I could find was DD size implants, far too big for a quad. Yeah, I think it'll happen. The 5G stuff is going to be huge innovation here as well, but it's a bit around the corner. I think the problem, FPV Steve, with using 5G is that the network isn't designed for low latency. However, the thing to understand is these chipsets all do a certain job. They process data. That data is then encoded for radio and transmitted, decoded, and put through. So you've got a couple of stages involved. And if you look at HD0, it works. It cuts a couple of the stages down compared to DJI, because you've got encoding to reduce data. Okay, so if you imagine your camera is spitting out, think of it as a water cannon of data. That's coming down that MIPI connection. It's a pipeline of high pressure water. But you can't transmit all that water great distance. It just won't. You can't spray all that water a great distance without huge amounts of pressure. So what you do then is reduce it and increase the pressure to get a smaller jet further. And sort of what they do in video transmission is you've got to take the image, because an image contains lots of info that hasn't changed. So if you're looking at my screen right now, the only bit that's moving is me. So when you're transmitting a frame of this video, especially if I do that bit, I'm the only bit that needs to change. Transmitting this entire frame of video is pointless. It's a complete waste of bandwidth when I'm the only bit moving. So you have encoding or compression, which removes the unnecessary data. So for instance, as YouTube is sending this image to you now, it is looking at what is changing in this frame and what has changed in the last frame, and it only sends the data that's different. So the idea is you have B frames, P frames, and it's called a GOP structure, basically, and it's how the image is broken up and transmitted, and they use things like macro blocks where they break the image into lots of little squares and stuff like that. Very complicated, but you don't need to know. But the basics are, if you imagine transmitting this, the bit around me doesn't need to move. The only bit that needs to change is me. So you can compress this image to only transmit the bit of data that has changed since the last frame. So you don't send the last frame, you just send the bit that's changed. And then the next frame, you send the bit that's changed. But the way a good codec and compressor works is that, say, every 5 frames, it will then send one full frame and then the rest of the little ones. And that's the basics of it. So HD0 and all of these digital systems are having to do this encoding to reduce the image to get it over. But the trick that HD0 is doing is simply doing it, sending it, spitting it out. And it's doing it that way. And that's the difference compared to DJI. It doesn't use interframes. No, DJI doesn't. The HD0 doesn't. It bins data, but it doesn't use interframes and all of that. DJI does, but HD0 doesn't. And there's so much to sending digital image quality. But the basics of taking that data, encoding it, transmitting it, sending it is all handled by the chipset. And there are different ways to do it. And there is no reason some of these very powerful future 5G-based chipsets will not be able to be programmed to do what we need them to do, especially if they have onboard FPGAs in the radio system as well. So there's a lot of interesting options. And a lot of these radio-based chipsets are very customizable simply through software. So it's going to be interesting. It's an extremely complicated subject, but the basics are today it takes custom ASICs to get low latency. Tomorrow it may not. And when that's the case, things are going to change. No, they say they have no compression at all, but it's a strange subject. It's not compression, but they're dumping image. See, compression is a process of making it smaller and then making it bigger again, and you're using interframes and stuff like that. You're trying to recover the data. What they're doing is spitting out the bits they don't need, almost saying we're going to hold that bit of the frame. We're not going to compress it. We're just going to ignore it, and then we're going to move on. But it's very complicated stuff. They simply rely on OFDM to squeeze all the bitrate into a limited RF bandwidth. Yeah, and it's on HD0. It's actually bigger than DJI. It's about 27 megs, whereas DJI is 25. So it's a bit of a different. It's a complicated subject, to say the least. There's guys in LT mod in his Parrot, but doing multiple kilometers, HD across the sea. Yeah, it will. Its latency is the issue, but these chipsets will be getting better. These chipsets will be getting better. Does the DJI RoboMaster take videos? Yes, it does. It has an SD card slot. Yes, it does. But it is a complicated subject. It really is. There is a fundamental difference. DJI compresses, HD0 doesn't. HD0 bins. Carl's never fully explained it, but there is a loss of data because it can't transmit all that data. It just wouldn't work. So they are removing unnecessary image data. Now, the question then becomes is what image data is that? Is it more like an MP3? So if you take into account an MP3 dumps a lot of data that the human ears can't listen to. So, you can have the full spectrum of audio data on a recording, yet it only transmits or records the bit it needs in that format in the middle, and it bins all of the rest. And then there's compression and everything else on it like that. So, yeah, it's... So how does a HD0 make a $50 VTX that contains a $250 AD93? Wow, are they that expensive at the moment? Even with the new cameras. Yeah, there is a level of the way HD0 works, I think, that softens the image and takes it away. Yes, I would say yes, GMI. You're not getting the full image data. It is binning data as we understand it. Now, is that color information? He did explain it because you got color information, you got obviously luminance and all of them, and the way they're sending it, and they're encoding different bits of it differently or processing different bits of it differently. And I do think that's why there is this look to it that isn't quite as good as DJI. It's really close, but it isn't quite. Can they improve it? On the current ASIC, that is debatable. I don't know. There is an inherent behavior, and Bruce has just made a very valid point. DJI's effective bandwidth is much higher due to the compression applied, massively. Because if you take their binning data to get it down to 27 megs, DJI are compressing and getting it to 25 and forcing it out that way. No, that's the thing. I think it's very difficult to change anything without a chipset, as Bruce has said. I think it's very complicated. It is a very complicated subject. It's not to say better cameras won't make a difference, but there is a limitation on how far you can go. There really is. Okay, so if you've got any questions, guys, please do put them in the chat. I'm just looking over there. Are DJI using 7-zip? Basically, yeah. You know, it's DJI is nothing special. It's compressed video. It's just how they're handling it is the key. It's how it's being handled. Will be viewable in DJI goggles and the new Orca goggles. I would be shocked if... I don't think anyone will be able to get video into DJI goggles via their system. I would be astonished. They're testing on DJI goggles, but have they just ripped out the hardware? That would be the question. Have they, you know, at the end of the day, you could just rip out the boards and use the screens. Do you know what I mean? There's always something to do stuff with. You know, you could just be using it as a baseline for something. Okay, so guys, if progress on the DJI FPV drone, I haven't done much. To be honest, I've been sidetracked with a few things. I'm going to start it over Christmas, Brutus. Probably AV in. There is that, Bruce. I never thought they'd be using analog. Digital to analog to digital. I would think there'd be new Orca goggles in the not too distant future. Or they've completely reflashed the firmware. DJI won't open anything. DJI are a closed source company. They don't do open. The goggles are very good. They are. But DJI don't do open source. They don't do that stuff. You know, you can always repurpose hardware. It's called a mule in the car industry. Yeah, we need to get that sorted. The servo, the camera for sure. I'm still trying to think of better ways to do it than a servo. I said before the 04Xs. Again, I think that's probably where I'm going to end up on my new FPV goggles. I'm still leaning on what to go for. I think I'm going to end up on the 04Xs. I'm waiting to see what Carl comes up with the new modules. I got thinking about this over the weekend, actually. And before we go on to the thing, it would be great if SkyZone, for instance, sort of laid the path of a digital module bay. Okay, you're not going to get digital into the current module bay, okay, in the set of FPV goggles. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. However, you could still have a bay where a module slots into and then sticks out beyond the front of the goggles. And something I've been thinking about, let me just grab my Fat Sharks and go in the overhead. So let's just go in the overhead. And what I've been thinking is a bay on the front where the module sort of slots into with a HDMI in the back, a micro HDMI sticking out. So rather than have this module like this, oh my God, look at the focus. Let's get the focus sorted, folks. No, there we go. There you go. Okay, so instead of having it on this module like this, is have it so this slots in. Even a very similar shape would work. It doesn't have to be much different. With a HDMI on the back that goes into the goggles. So I almost have like a bay that comes in like this. Even this sort of size where a receiver would go in. And it would be nice if someone like SkyZone sort of did that. Started the process. So you create a set of goggles where we're going to create a digital compatible bay for future use. And then once the goggle manufacturers start it, I think it'd be interesting to see the likes of HD Zero and others do it. It might mean making the goggles longer. Look, that's a reality. This isn't a bad solution, but it's not ideal. There is more that could be done on this. That's my point. And remember, this could actually be that size there, because that there is actually the space for the antennas. That isn't actually, you know, when I pop these off, I think these just pop off. I don't think they're screwed. Here we go. You know, there is space there behind them. So you've got the antennas, and if we then go in, you can see the board is located quite far back. So there is space for this module to be smaller. There's no question about that. You know, these are the right-hand circular polarized patch. Actually, made by, who are these made by? Are they Immersion RC? Immersion RC, yet again, look. So they go into there, and then you have the little cover that pops over the top and holds them in place. Can't remember which way around it goes. Oh, it might be that way. There we go. And that's the antenna. So there is space there for it to, you know, this could be smaller. If it didn't have the built-in antennas, there are options, you know. So it's not as simple as nothing, but there is the possibility of putting a bay in. They should be the same depth as Fat Shark with screwed module. Just smaller add-ons would be nice. Perhaps the digital bay would fit normal goggle slot. I'm just going to wait for the bio-implant connector. I tabulated the Orca ones. I think we're going to see new goggles from Orca. I think it's inevitable. Right, guys. Before I finish this stream up, we're going to quickly go over to the microscope, and we're just going to take a quick look at this new HD Race VTX under the microscope. So I just wanted to share with you, really, how well these are actually made, because this is the new TX5 R.1 version 2. Try saying that without a prompt. TX5 R.1, so here we go. TX5 R.1 version 2. TX5 R.1 version 2. Change the naming, please. Carl, we love you. We love what you're doing right now, but please, the naming. Can we deal with the naming? It's ridiculous. But anyway, because I do have the TX5 R.1 version 1, and I have the TXR 5.1 version 2. Red lorry, yellow lorry. So yeah, we're going to take a quick look at this. Now, this is the new Race VTX. This is the new, smaller version. Yes, I know. Yes, Duck Me Squeeze. You are 100%. It should be, surely, it should be the TX5 R.2. But no, it isn't. When you go on their website, and I checked this, right? Because I've just been making content about this today, and I was thinking, oh, it can't be, you know. So you go on their website, products, HD video transceivers, the Race VTX 0.2. If we go into the support page and downloads for firmware, TX5 R.1 and Race version 2. Oh, they're calling it the Race version 2. Race version 2. So TX5 R.1 / Race version 2. So it's not called the TXR 5.1 anymore. It's called the Race version 2 officially. But bloody overly complicated. It really is. But anyway, let me refocus because I've moved the camera. Oh, no. Come on, Sony. Play ball. Play ball. So this is the new Race VTX from HD0, I should say. This is branded HD0. Notice, Fat Shark Bite is gone. And it's now HD0. It's the same box. Overall, the same packaging, same feel to it. Exactly the same. But this is the new Race VTX. Now, when you get it, you get the board itself, and we'll shove it under the microscope in a second just to have a look. And then in the bottom, you get some wires, some isolators, and the little plates to hold the connections on. Now, this board is the 40x40 version with 30x30 mounting of the... Is that 40x30? 20x20? I've lost track, actually, myself. I better check on the website, because I might be telling you the wrong thing there. I think it's 40x40. Oh, no, sorry, 20x20 mounting And the board is 34 by 34. Sorry. Board is 34 by 34 by 20 by 20 mounted. And this is the new race version. That, let me just add that in the chat. That is the replacement for the original TX5 R.1. Really, the big difference between this one and the TXR 5.1 is this one doesn't have a harness connector. I wish it did. I prefer harness connectors. So this goes back to solder pads. So we've got power up here and the others down there. We do have a firmware update port. We have a camera control port down here. It is vibration isolated board, as you can see through the holes, and it has securable connections. So the UFL is securable and the MIPI is securable as well. Now, what we're going to do is get this under the microscope. So let me just power it up because I haven't turned it on yet. Okay, done that. I'm just going to mute you a sec, guys, whilst I move the mic. Okay, so I think the mic should be back on. Let me just check. Hello? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay, so the microphone should be back on. Let me just move some things out of the way a second. Woo-hoo-hoo. And we'll just take a bit of a closer look at how this board looks under the microscope and what the build quality of this board is actually like. Now, I have got a bit of distance on the microphone here, so I'm just going to try and get it over a bit closer to my mouth. And if we take a look around, so obviously we've got the DiviMath chipset, which is the DM5680T and the DM6300. And as Bruce said earlier, one of these is based off analog devices. Looking around the board on this side, you can see obviously we've got the MIPI connector up there, which is unique to HD0. We've got the UFL down that side there. The solder pads, so we've got the power, ground and voltage in. And then we've got our TX, RX, TX2 and RX2. And one of these is our smart audio port because this board does support smart audio. And then flipping it over on the other side, you can see there's not actually a lot other than some very basic components. Now looking around the board, we've got the power amplifier here. This is the PA. And if we just go in a bit closer, you'll see what this one is. Let's just get in. And it is, let me just focus. So this is the PA5542. And this is the same 200 milliwatt output power amplifier that they've been using on a number of their VTXs. Let me just get it focused again. Now we're down soon. We then got the UFL connector, obviously soldered on nicely with the track going into some capacitors, moving around all the way around over to the output on the power amplifier. And then if we look on the power amplifier, you can see the track back to the filter, which is the transmitter filter. And then that goes down with some of the components glued in place, either for protection or when in use. We've then got a chipset up here, which is labeled 1755. And I thought this was a voltage regulator, but it might not be. This might be something to do with the MIPI input, but I think it's a voltage reg. I need to check that one out. I haven't had a chance to do it yet. We've then got the MIPI, we've got our crystal, and we've got our chipset, which is our 1706C24. Now, this chipset handles the MIPI input. We know this already. Again, it's a BGA style chipset, and that's the one they've replaced on a lot of the other boards. There appears to be another voltage regulator there, and then you've just got the rest of the components. Now, the interesting thing is when you do look at the board, right, everything is pretty much on this one side of the board. The other side of the board has very little on at all. So when we flip it over, yes, it's got some components and there's some transistors, a big capacitor and a power stage. That's clearly a power stage. However, they don't put a lot on this side of the board. You can see there a copper area for the power amplifier. So there's the PA, and there is a copper heatsink to try and get some of that heat away, as well as some shielding. There's nothing up here. So that one there is most likely the system on a chip power regulator for the main ICs. But other than that, there isn't a huge amount going on other than sundry components. You can see the FCC ratings. But if we go in, the board is very well made. Considering how small it is, I will be honest, it is very well made indeed. I see zero issues with the quality, the manufacturing, or anything on these boards at all. All of the components are straight and in place. Nothing's misaligned, even as small as they are. Happy Model could learn a lot from this. They are gluing a lot of the very small ones down. I'm assuming this is for assembly, to help them with the assembly process. That's what I'm assuming it's for. But everything just looks tidy. And if we spin it over again, we can see, let's just refocus. There we go. The quality of the soldering on the chipset is good around the PA, around there. Sorry, that's the MIPI side. Sorry, that's probably that voltage regulator. So we're down there. Everything looks very, very tidy. Now, something I do just want to mention, I really like on these boards from HD0, and that is that they show you the voltage regulator output. So you're able to actually do some tests. If you ever have any problems on these boards, you can actually test them. So let me just grab my tweezers a minute. Okay, so here we've got one V8, which is 1.8 volts, one V2, which is 1.2 volts. Moving around, we've got ground, 3.3 volts. Can't quite see what that one there says. 5 volt, I think that's 5. Looking at the microscope, I think that one's 5. So you do have some test points you can use if you wanted to diagnose the unit. 130C, what's that? Oh no, sorry, spin it over. That says something else. That is PDET, whatever that is. But we do have various ports on the board. 5 volt again, down the bottom here. So it is nice that they have put everything on there. And then you can see around the actual pinouts, we've got our voltage, ground and voltage, and R1, T1, R2 and T2. And one of them is the smart audio ports as well. But overall, I have to say, the build quality on these VTXs is very, very good. I don't see any issues with them at all. I really don't. I'm just going to hop back over. So I'm going to move the mic a second, guys. Sorry about the noise. And we'll come back. There we go. So that's just a quick look at the HD0 module. I am going to be doing a proper video on this one, but I thought I'd share with you guys a bit of a sneak peek. What I would say is this. I'm going to hop over to the chat now just to catch up. If you are using any digital VTXs, I would strongly recommend getting yourself some of these spike absorbers from FETTech. These do have a TVS diode on board already. I didn't show that under the microscope, but there is one. There is a TVS diode located just there on the board. They do fit one as standard. However, I would strongly suggest still getting yourself some of these because they really do make a difference. They really, really do. They are very, very good at absorbing spikes and stuff like that. Okay, so catching up on the chat. Let me just go to that screen for that. Okay. Evening, Gary. How are you? I appreciate that the tracks for you fell are covered to prevent as much. Okay. Okay, time to go up a bit. What's this I've come back to? Mike Bergen. Smells like crack. Expensive returns. You are having to return to China if you bought from China, but if you're buying locally, it's okay. Better, secure. I just like plug-in connectors, Bruce. And there is a reason I like a plug-in connector on my HD0 system. It gets very hot very quickly. If I want to plug it in on the bench, I like to be able to unplug the VTX if I don't need it. And that's why I like the TX5 R.1, because that board has the connector on it and I can simply unplug it and don't have to worry about it overheating. I do like having that option. Duck My Squeeze is coming up with the new names. They need to change the naming profile. Speed holes make the HD faster. Surely they are cable tie holes. There's a hole there for the MIPI connection, which is a cable tie type hole, yeah. Is that conformal coating? I don't believe it's conformal coating, D-Menace. I think it's glue to hold the components. What a great place to put that amplifier. Yes. My only concern with this board, and I have said that before, and I said it on their forum as well, is all of the components, let me just get my tweezers, that you really need are close to the edge. So the power amplifier is on that side of the connector, the voltage regulator, they are susceptible to getting hit by something. That is a concern that I would have. Them. Even the main chipset is close to the edge, but they are on limited space here. So what it is to a point, what can they do? 68K processor with Flatgun chips. You will find CE stamp. There's no CE stamp. China export. Passed inspection. Not conformal coating. I think it's glue for helping some of the small components. I think because of heat. The glue. Glue for double-sided tends to be much smaller. I think the glue is to provide physical reinforcement, crash resistance. Yeah, either assembly or just to give them a bit more. The thing to remember is lead solder is really soft. Please don't eat trappy. Does it have a 710 cap? Good mate. Good evening, Gary. I hope you're well. Pretty awesome that the new Meteor 65 is 35mm prop tiny whoop, and it looks like it takes a 2S board unlike the 65. Yeah, that sounds very cool. 35mm. That's cool. Meteor 65 Pro. Let's just have a look at that before I wrap this one up tonight, guys. I've got an early start. I'm away for 3 days, unfortunately, after today. That looks quite cool. The Meteor 65 Pro brushless. And ExpressLRS. Very nice indeed. It's a really cheap way of getting into FPV as well, isn't it? It really is. £89. And you're up and running and ready to go. It is incredible, really. It really is. Right, guys. We've gone over the 2 hours. I think. No, we haven't. 8:30. What time did I start? 9, 10. No, we haven't. We've got an hour and a half. Will you be seeing... I don't know if I can be there Tuesday, Gary. I have to go away tomorrow. I need to find out what the score is. I will send you an email. It is my last trip of the year planned, but I do have to go away, unfortunately. So the plan, guys, is for the RF Solutions. Not the RF Solutions. The RF Concepts Radio. RF Concepts? They're not even RF Concepts. What are they called? It's my last trip of the year. They've started at the end of the year, and hopefully they're going to finish at the end of the year for a while as well, until at least the new year. Let me just check. I'm going a little bit mad because I created RF Designs, not RF Concepts. So, the RF Designs video, this goes live on Tuesday, which is one I've been working on for quite some time. It's a complete overview of the system, the different radios, and the differences between the radios in the sense of what models are compatible with each other. In part 2, we're going to be taking a look at the TX mod device that they have as well. And then in part 3, we're going to be setting them up with ArduPilot. So that's around the corner on Tuesday. RF Designs. For some reason, I just couldn't get it in my head a second. we're then going to be getting the rest of the ExpressLRS stuff done, as well as the HD0 videos. There is a video coming up on a new flight controller, the SpeedyBee stack. So I'm going to be reviewing that. And I've got to really then just evaluate, get everything tied up for the end of the year. I might even have a build with that SpeedyBee flight controller. I'm hoping that's going to be a build. I'm probably going to turn that into a build video. And if I do it as a build, I'll be doing it with the TX5. It'll be another HD0 build. Because I'm not very happy with how my Roma flies. My current HD0 build is a Roma. It's very sluggish compared to my other aircraft. The SpeedyBee frame is fantastic. On the same rates, the HD0 Roma version 2 is just sluggish in all of the moves, the flips, the rolls. I've even jacked the rates up higher, and it just feels fat. Is that the SpeedyBee with ESC? I don't know 100% what's coming, so I can't comment. I haven't seen JB stuff, his video yet, so I'll need to check that out. I do know F1 just race distracted me. I need to keep an eye on it and have a look. So, but no, guys, that's it. There's going to be those videos coming up, and then in the new year, we're going to start from scratch. Perhaps I need to go and buy a Mini 2 and make some content on that based on the search results. As I said earlier, perhaps that's where the future is. I am evaluating what I do with... I'm at the stage where I'm no longer doing much commercial work. Funny enough, I've just finished getting my commercial, my PFCO resubmitted. It's been sent back twice. I messed up, and then they messed up, which I find quite funny. But the CAA have been absolutely fantastic. I think it's now done. I think it's now correct. And I am evaluating whether I should replace, because I'm not doing really any commercial work. And whether I should flog both and just put a Mavic 3 on the shelf. And to be honest, it'll probably do the best of both. But we're going to have to see. We're going to have to see. The reality is, by the time summer comes, DJI are probably going to be releasing the Mavic, the Inspire 3. And there are whispers. I'll share that with you guys now. I don't know anything concrete, but there are whispers on the grapevine. There's an Inspire 3 coming, not this year, early next, mid next. It's going to be very, very expensive. And chances are it won't have a new module for the Sindent. So anyone who owns a Sindent, don't get your hopes up. It's not going to come. I suspect it'll be an all-new radio. They'll probably go to the RC Pro because that's all that anyone really needs. The Sindent is very good, but they never released the full capabilities of that radio. It's so hamstrung, it's annoying. The only thing I really like on the Sindents, is the sliders on the side to be able to slow the aircraft down. It's really handy to be able to very quickly just do that. That's about the only feature they should really bring over. But I am thinking about it. But the time, again, we have to make some decisions on the timings and everything. And I was looking at used prices today on the sales of Mavic 2s and stuff like that. And not good. Not good in any shape or form. Very, very low. Let me just go on eBay again before we go. They were very low. DJI 2 Pro. And I was looking for listings. I always forget this features here, which is thing always says it. Sold. Is it in the buying format? Where'd you find the stuff that's actually sold? Type always has it. Where is it, Type? You there? Where's the option? Sold items. There we go. Completed and sold. So, ended recently. If we have a look, £640. And you always know where it is, type. You always know. You're the man who always tells me where it is. So the last few, let's have a look in the UK. So £900. Wow, that went well. 640, 820. It's better than I thought, actually. 730. Isn't terrible. 950. Okay, there is a possibility here. Let's have a look at the Inspire 2. These seemed really low when I looked at these earlier. I was concerned. Wow, a airframe has gone for £1,000. Has that got batteries? That can't have batteries. What? 750? That can't be right. That can't be right. 1,100. Inspire 2s are not going well. Inspire 2s. Look at that. X-Size X6 batteries. Sold on the 18th of November. That's a while back. I am thinking of letting the i2 go. What about DJI FPV drone? I could sell all three. I have to make a decision on the FPV drone. DJI FPV drone. No goggles. So someone sold the drone for £480. That's not bad. That's not bad. $499 for the drone only and the remote. I don't want to get rid of my V2 goggles. That's the problem. I don't want to sell the V2s. I just don't want to. FPV drone fly mode went for $600 with remote and battery. Wow. No goggles. No, they're going. They are going for like £500-600. It's $400 for the drone. That's what it should cost. Yeah, they seem to be going more in the UK. 3 batteries. Someone said that's brand new. Well, it's not brand new, is it? That can't be right. £200. Best offers accepted. I probably went for more than that. A few have been sold. 834. So, yeah, there are some options around it. Actually, it's good, that one. There are some options around it. I have been looking. If I did some quick math, if we say got 800 for the FPV drone, 750 for the Mavic, and 1,800. I could probably get a fly more kit. I could probably get the fly more kit of the Mavic 3. So I'm swapping 3 drones for 1. Which is interesting. I got you used a Mini 2 fly more kit for 380 on Amazon. Yeah. I am thinking, from a commercial operation point of view, it could be time for me to get rid of the Inspire 2. I do think the Inspire 2, it's probably time it went. It's just a difficult product to sell in itself. But I'm going to have to look at it. Right, guys. That's it from me. Please stay safe. Look after yourselves. Thank you for spending some time with me. We'll be back next week again, Sunday night, live, 9 p.m. UK, whatever the time is everywhere else in the world. I'm going to do some shilling. If you're new here, please do consider hitting the subscribe button. If you want us to keep making content like this, please do consider our Patreon as well as Buy Me a Coffee. I am going to be pushing the Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee a bit more just so I can understand how things push moving forward. I want to thank everyone who gave feedback on the video I put up earlier. Again, it's about me trying to understand and discover where we go in 2022. And more than anything, what we're going to do is get the next live stream out the way. The next one, we're going to have a Christmas one. I'm going to take about 2 weeks off over Christmas. I'll probably, over Christmas, shut down for a couple of weeks on the live streams, and then we'll start back up second or third week of January, and then we'll go from there. That's it. Stay safe, look after yourselves, and I will speak to you guys again soon. Now I've got to find that button that allows me to turn it off. Where is it? There it is. 1, 2, 3. And don't forget, if you haven't watched Get Back yet, Get Back is well worth a look if you haven't watched it. Bye-bye.